So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have PV Kannan, who is the founder and CEO of 24/7. Hi, PV. How are you doing?
Yeah. Hey, again, how are you?
I'm very well. Sir. So, PV, for the benefit of our listeners and our readers, can you tell us a little bit about you and tell us a little bit about the work that you do as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started this company 16 years back, and prior to that, I was the co-founder of a company in 1995 called Business Evolution that created the first chat platform for customer service.
Uh huh.
At that time, obviously, the internet was just picking up. Mosaic browser had come out, and Netscape browser had come out, and there was hardly any real online commerce. And I started asking the question to myself, how will customers get served? Will they have to call an 800 number if they're on a website?
Sure.
So at that time, obviously, the IRC chat rooms were, quite famous, and people would gather in groups and chat all day long. So, but that technology obviously was not secure. It was too open-ended for companies. So we started building essentially a chat platform. And obviously by 97, e-commerce picked up. And then, of course, the dot-com boom happened. So in 99, I sold my first company. And during the course of the 4 years, I had a chance to visit about 50 contact centers around the U.S., which are, utilizing the software that the earlier company had developed.
Uh-huh.
And what I found was an astonishing gap between what consumers want and what companies want and what providers of software and the contact centers do. And it's almost like it was all designed never to deliver customers what they want, right? So, and I was also amazed that the whole notion of service, even though we were in a digital age, was still being handled like a phone call. So, chat would be like, hey, how's your day going? How can I help you? Although, even though the enterprise actually knows what you're doing on their website, or the fact they could have actually clicked on an offer they sent you and, you clicked on it and you came to the website and started using the product, and then you had a question, you click on chat. So it kind of gave me a awakening that, it's not just enough to develop software. You have to connect the dots all the way to the agent. That's where the experience actually materializes. Right?
Yeah.
So the brilliance of the software is of no use if the experience cannot be lighted up. So the focus of 24/7 when I came out and started 24/7 is really a couple of things. One, I was overwhelmed by the data the internet captures on what consumers are doing.
Uh-huh.
And the backend systems are capturing, but very little was used to leverage that to provide a smoother experience, right?
Right.
And so we came up with this notion of if you have enough data on what customers do across over a period of time, say a year, we should be able to predict their behavior and anticipate and kind of take one step forward so that they don't miss something. Like if we know that you like to pay 2 days before the credit card is due. And if you didn't call that day to, or didn't come to the website to pay, how can we proactively reach out and go, hey, it's time to pay your credit card?
Right.
But more interestingly, if you explore for tickets online, say, I'm trying to book a business class ticket to London, and then I call BA. BA today has no clue what I'm doing on the web. So we said, wouldn't it be great to create a system where actually, the system actually knows what you're doing and starts the conversation by saying, hey, PV, I noticed you want to go to London next week. How can I help you? Then, the conversation is far more smoother.
Right.
And there was another interesting phenomenon that we started observing, which was in and around 2004, 2005, and, the large banks, the large telcos started providing more self-service capabilities on the website, that consumers actually preferred self-service to talking to someone.
Right.
And I think it's only gotten worse in the last 5 years. Messaging and everything else that the consumer does like routinely. You and I, all day long use the mobile phone. We're messaging. We're doing things. And then somehow the enterprise world still remains clunky as if it's like locked in a mysterious 18th or 19th century black hole, right? And so that's kind of what the company does. The company, what it does is data is the premise of the company, and then the other big component is design. we use data to kind of, give the designers a view as to how to, design the experience. And then we provide all the technologies that you need for both self-service and assisted service, but in what we call a predictive way, right?
Right.
So we predict what we're going to do. We even predict what channel you'll pick. We predict how long the conversation is. So, we can kind of make it really rapid and very personalized to suit your needs. So our large customers are essentially, big telcos around the world. The big banks and credit card companies and insurance companies use us a lot. And then retail and travel are another two big segments. And essentially, our platform handles roughly about 2 billion conversations a year at this time.
Fantastic. Now, I know that you and I were kind of connected because I recently wrote an article that was sort of starting to ask and question about whether it's time to consider the balance of technology and the kind of human touch and customer experience. And I was made some of my understanding is that you share some of the same sort of concerns, and I just wanted to kind of maybe if you could let me kind of share some of your thoughts and concerns around kind of that in terms of that whole balance piece.
I think the foundation for, let's imagine a world where there are no humans at all in, any type of, commercial transaction, right? Whether it's travel or banks. I think the banks will have a difficult time establishing what their brand is, right? Because, because everything is faceless, right? It's not like you walk into a physical store and experience something and talk to people. And so if you're an established brand, you could, get away with your existing customer base because you already built the trust and relationship and convenience and, the habit of shopping with you. But if you're going to attract a new customer base, there has to be that moment of truth where the customer goes, this brand really cares about me, right? And we all have, very specific opinions about all the brands we interact with. So the question really, the insight we got is, consumers want self-service, but the minute they don't want it, they want the immediate human connection.
Yeah.
Right, and that's kind of what I call the magic balance, right? I want to check in myself. I want my ticket in boarding pass in my mobile phone. But if something goes wrong, I don't want to wait, right?
Yeah.
I want to call someone and get it sorted out because it's a very stressful moment, right? And I don't think companies recognize which interactions and which moments create stress for the customer, which moments create delight for the customer. And, therein lies this big gap where, either companies go all out to automate, and even if you attempted, self-service on the web, and then you call, they'll again try to automate it, even though it clearly doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then they take around a long time, and then you reach the agent who's completely clueless what the issue is, right? And I think in a data-driven world, in year 2016, we're approaching 2017, consumers are finding it unacceptable, right? And that's why I think you're seeing the, surge in dissatisfaction with brands in Twitter or anything else because their expectation level has been set to a new high with all the convenience that's available around us, right?
Okay. But that's really kind of interesting. And it's particularly interesting, possibly a little bit ironic, coming from a company that has an AI-powered virtual assistant called Hanny. I mean, does that mean that kind of like you understand this kind of balance, but actually that you're proactively trying to work with your clients to help them strike the right balance?
Yes, and the way we structure it is we have a clear understanding which customer journeys, often end up with a human contact. Right? And we also know why. We also know, like I'll give you a very simple example, which, companies are very frustrated. If you travel abroad and come back, you're going to have a bill shock, right? Even though you thought you had a travel pack or whatever data plan you had. So, and typically those, conversations are over the phone, and they don't want to deal with the, automated system because they want to vent their frustration as well. Right? So if we detect that, in the back end that your bill has gone up by 20% and the reason is you went abroad, then, our system will smartly route it to an agent who's, trained to be more empathetic and then take care of the customer, right? So that's how we think about the problem. But it all goes back to, kind of asking the question, what would the customer want to do? For that moment. And I don't think brands think about it that way. They start with their viewpoint, and then software companies have their viewpoint, and data companies have their viewpoint. Who cares?
Yeah.
right? It's ultimately the end consumer that gets to decide what level of service they need to get for the amount of money they spend, right?
Okay. And so, tell me tell me a little bit more about how you actually kind of do that sort of, analysis and prioritization and sort of, the decision making that goes behind sort of, or the analysis that goes behind
Mm-hmm.
the identifying kind of what are the most important sort of actions or situations that you need to, if you like, inject a human touch into it. I mean, how does that work?
Mm-hmm. So let me give you a live example.
Okay.
Hilton worldwide uses our, chat platform and, the predictive capabilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way it works is we tag all the Hilton properties, which, tagging the website and, getting that data stream allows us to understand what a customer is doing on Hilton's website, right?
Right.
And for the first month, we gather the data and then we go, where did the breakpoint happen? When did they reach out to the 800 number? Right?
Right.
So it's kind of like studying action for consumer behavior. And then after that, we'll enable chat, and then we don't restrict it, and we just want to collect as much data as possible to start understanding all these journeys and moments where things either go super well or things it's a disaster, right?
Right.
And so typical use cases, we find that people who are traveling with family often have questions about the special needs that they need, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have a 3-year-old and a 15-year-old, you want to make sure both have interesting activities to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes we, hotel websites are designed to give lots of information, but sometimes they don't, nail the 1-2 things you're looking for.
Yeah.
Right? And so if people are confused between properties and they keep moving back and forth between 2 hotels in the same area, we realize, that, most likely there are some reasons what they'll talk about. Like, is this close to that attraction? Like, is it close to Disneyland or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how the predictive model is built. So there's a mathematical model that's observing visitors and in real time predicting, whether you're going to get stuck or not. And if you get stuck, what the issue is likely to be.
Right. I see.
So, and that's why we're able to personalize and give a predictive experience saying, hey, is this what you're looking for? In the initial stages, obviously, a real human agent answers those questions. And then over a period of time, we figure out which ones are kind of, easy ones to tackle and then start automating it.
Right.
And then over a period of time, we understand the more complex transactions and then start automating it if, the customer wants to go along. But our virtual agent, right up front, first doesn't pretend to be a human being. It, announces it's a virtual agent.
Yeah.
And it maintains a very professional attitude. So the idea is not to create, a character or a persona because consumers are coming not for entertainment, right? They want something done.
Yeah.
And they need it done fast, and it's not for amusement like Siri or anything. So. So we take into account the brand's image. So if it's a little bit playful, brand, a little bit humorous, then, you obviously take the brand's input in deciding what the content will look like. Right. But otherwise, it's supposed to be just like a human agent. You can't ask a human agent, idiotic questions, right?
Well,
so
yeah, sure.
It's the same thing. So that's kind of how it works. And, the key to making all of this work is, we are big believers that if a machine cannot solve a problem, the human agent will. And so we call it the close collaboration between the machine and the human being to make the world of customer service, a lot better.
Right. Okay. And kind of like, so when you kind of talk about kind of Hilton and stuff, I mean, how has that helped them? I mean, I guess 2 questions. I mean, one is that there's this feast of technological options around right now. I mean,
right.
But Hilton's kind of I guess you're working with them to implement this and get, if you like, strike the right balance. And I guess that's probably an evolving balance. But what sort of?
It is. Also, the particular implementation of Honey that you're talking about, it only tries to solve simple problems because it's a fairly new implementation.
Yeah.
Right? So if you keep watching it, it'll get smarter and smarter as time goes by. And it's also, in a market which we don't understand that well in the Middle East. So, it was a very different kind of implementation.
Yeah.
If it's a, like if we have done Hilton, if another hotel chain comes and approaches and says, hey, I'm in this luxury hotel business, can you help me? Then, we have a far better understanding of what their needs would be already, right?
Right.
So it's faster for us to, implement the second or third, instance within a given vertical.
Yeah. And so what are sort of some of the business kind of benefits or business results, improvement in results are kind of Hilton kind of like seeing around this kind of this type of approach? Because that's ultimately the kind of the big question, right?
That's correct. So essentially, I mean, it gets monitored on a daily basis, right? Because the way we look at, we get measured is on the revenue side of the house.
Mm-hmm.
They measure us on, the conversion rates. Right?
Uh-huh.
So how well are we converting compared to self-service conversion, right?
Yeah.
So and right now we're trending at about 3x the conversion, right?
Right.
And then the second factor we look at is how satisfied is the customer with the agent,
Mm-hmm.
right? And right now it's standing at about 97%.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and so in fact, so the senior guys in Hilton did a presentation at a Forrester conference in London recently, and I actually joined that presentation with the client. So, but it also requires a brand to be forward-thinking and kind of break the mold.
Sure.
Right? Otherwise, just go back to the routine, like, yeah, let's stick to 800 number and let's go on with it, right? And I think it helps that, brands like Hilton are forward-thinking and, there's a big emphasis on innovation and making it easy for the customer.
And do you think kind of this whole question about trying to achieve the right balance, is that going to be a big question that we're going to see more and more coming up in 2017?
I mean, clearly, there is there are things that we guide our clients, which is if you just base your objective as revenue, then you do like what the marketing world has done, just bombard you with all kinds of messages that have no meaning to you, right?
Sure.
But if you're predicting something, and in the in another telco example, let's say typically people renew their phones, and start looking for new models 2 to 3 months before the plan is up, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, they read about the phone as soon as it comes out because we all want to know what the latest Samsung does or the latest iPhone does. But if I'm in a contract and my contract is not going to expire for a year, I shouldn't pester you, right? And so we leave those kind of visitors alone. But if you're in the last 30 days or last 60 days, now we will smartly do a retargeting ad, which actually shows the exact model that you're likely to buy. So it's not like a generic ad or the last thing you saw on their website. It's able to mathematically quantify and say, you're likely to buy iPhone rose gold color, so much, size and so on and so forth.
Sure.
And that way, it looks much more, something that's on the customer's mind. We've seen the customer come 3 times in the last, 30 days or whatever the data tells us. So it's about how do you get smart so that, you're, cautiously, kind of following them, but at the same time not overdo it.
Right. And so let me kind of ask you then, is like, if I was to ask you to give some around this kind of topic around kind of the balance or achieving the right sort of balance. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you were to give some sort of top kind of advice for managers, executive entrepreneurs that are thinking about their sort of tech human kind of balance kind of going into 2017, I mean, what would be your top advice for them? Where should they start?
Yeah, I think, the top advice would be on it doesn't matter whether it's the revenue side of the house or the customer service, post-purchase customer service side of the house, right? It's really, first getting to know how different journeys affect your customers, right? Both in the human-assisted world, it's not perfect either, right?
Yeah.
So, that's number one. And I don't think companies look at it. They look at aggregate customer satisfaction, right? But some journeys you may be performing really bad, and then some journeys you're doing really well, and then you get some average number like NPS 45, and it doesn't tell you anything. Right?
Sure.
And so for us, the first approach is, clearly understanding the moments, and then from there distill it down and go, what are the moments that matter the most?
Right.
Right. And that involves an understanding of the company's brand. If you're Four Seasons, then a lot more is expected than if you are like a travel lodge or some budget chain, right?
Yeah.
So that needs to be incorporated as well. And then customer expectations are quite interesting. No one expects, if they pay a $10 subscription a month, to get white glove service.
No.
Be delighted if they get it. So they're fine with a higher level of automation, but there is very less tolerance if someone is spending 120 pounds a month on cable or on a phone service, and something doesn't work and the company doesn't take responsibility.
Right.
And I also think the other thing, brands, the advice I would give to the brands is think about what are things that I can predict in advance so that I can be ready and look prepared, right?
Yeah.
What we do is if an automated system says hey, I'm saying we call an 800 number, an automated system in the past would say, hey, tell me in your own words what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
And today our automated systems will say, hey Adrian, I know this you're trying to make a payment and you had some issues.
Yeah.
Let me help you with that, right? And what we find is, typically in automated systems on the phone, for whatever reason, get a more negative reaction than dealing with text,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's just because of the historical memory of how terrible they are. Right?
Yes.
And so what we found is the engagement rate goes up dramatically. Over 90% then continue with the conversation because the system started the conversation with a level of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the world is going. So, those would be my two top points.
Fantastic. So, PV, I'm just kind of keeping an eye on kind of time because I know you're a busy guy, but I just kind of wanted to ask you a couple of kind of more questions.
Okay.
First thing is there anything else that you want to kind of add? Anything else that kind of people should be looking out for as we kind of come to the end of 16 going into 17?
Yeah, right now I'd say there's a lot of buzz on AI and bots and so on and so forth.
Uh-huh.
And I would advise brands not to jump into it headlong without understanding how is it going to change the customer experience.
Sure.
Right? Because they, oftentimes companies end up in this issue where they think that's a silver bullet that's going to take off 80% of my cost or something like that. Without understanding what is the implication of this, and if it's you don't want a bot handling a journey that's very delicate and creates a lot of emotion around it.
Yeah.
Right? So that understanding needs to happen. So picking the right use cases and then implementing it with care is important. And the other caution is if you don't collect the right kind of data, AI and machine learning is going to do nothing.
Sure.
Right? It's a classic problem in 10 years back when business intelligence and data warehouses were all the rage. But if you didn't organize your data in the right way and collect all the right data, it's not going to produce any insights.
Sure.
Right? And I think companies are fairly confused. They think it's the system has evolved to a higher level of intelligence than what it is. It's like teaching a child, and it takes time.
Yeah. Perfect. So I've got two questions left, PV, and they are the first one is a little bit of a selfish one because I wrote a book that was published earlier this year, and what I've been doing is I've been asking kind of people. It's called the book's called How to Wow, but I've been asking kind of people. So PV, what's wow service or experience to you?
Yeah, there's a restaurant here called the French Laundry.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you're familiar with it in Napa here in California, and it's the chef is Thomas Keller.
Right.
And he spoke at a TED conference, and I happened to watch that video. And in that he says my ambition is if someone walks into my restaurant, that day's experience should be one of the top 3 or 5 memories in your lifetime.
Right.
Right? That kind of nails it, and that's of course a very high-end, expensive restaurant. I think each brand needs to ask itself, what do we want to be known for?
Yeah.
Right? And then continuously reinforce that. It doesn't have to be the top 5 experiences. No one is going to go talk to a car rental company and think it was one of the top 5 experiences. unless they lead a truly pathetic life, right?
Yeah.
So, but it has to be that, hey, I'm known for speed, I'm known for simplicity, I'm known for, convenience, I'm known for this, and then make sure that every interaction reinforces it,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, you miss the whole opportunity to, establish a trusted relationship with the brand. And as I said, customers don't expect the same level of service from every brand. They understand that if it's a cheaper category, that you have to trade off, right?
Yeah.
And so that, I don't think companies think like that. Most of the time they are more worried about their internal process and their internal thinking, and kind of not allow the customers in to kind of take their opinion on how it should be done, right?
Perfect. I mean, it's great. It's basically you're basically saying WoW should be relative for every single company.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely brilliant. You nailed it. So that brings me to my final question, PV, and which is one I always ask at the end of these interviews. And the question is this: is there anything that you would like to shamelessly plug?
Oh, I wish everyone asked me this question. So I always try to sneak it in, but when I saw the question, I'm like, oh wow, this is amazing. I mean, I'll seriously plug two things. If any listener is looking to increase revenues on the web with a systematic, scientific way, they should reach out to us. And if they're looking for a very conscious balance between self-service and assisted service and how to execute it well, they should reach out to us, and we'd be delighted to serve them.
PV, that's been excellent. I mean, I've really enjoyed our chat, and I just want to say thank you for sharing your time and your experience with us. And I will make sure I get this all kind of edited up and linked up, and give you a big shout out and things. But just thank you so much for your time.
Great, thanks, Adrian. Bye bye.